want to fucking pull me back into that. We're done with that. Okay, we're moving on. We're moving on to a different line of attack coming from the State Department. So the State Department released a new report this morning. This comes after the political terrorism event. Okay. Ken Klippenstein was the one who informed me this morning. But here is a highlight. Here is a headline. U.S. accuses Cuba of long-term ideological warfare and infiltration at the highest levels of the American government. Okay. The New Republic wrote about it too. State Department targets Hassan Piker, Ilhan Omar's daughter, and DSA. A new State Department report on Cuba goes after American citizens on the left. Now, this is a gross violation of the First Amendment. There's no other way to read it. It is a direct attack on American citizens exercising their freedom of speech, their freedom of expression. Ken Klippenstein reported on it this morning as well. I said, why is the State Department naming American citizens in their Cuba report where they seemingly complain about our opinions on U.S. sanctions policy? This is absolutely protected by the First Amendment. They are trying to chill speech through intimidation. This is a not so subtle way of bringing McCarthyism back to the United States of America. And the targets are, ironically enough, also identical. Okay? Because there is no domestic terrorism statute, as it would be directly at odds with the First Amendment, the State Department is utilizing the broad powers that it has in the post-9/11 global war on terror universe. They're using the tools that they have at their disposal that they've deployed over and over again by claiming that the people that are socialists, that criticize the Trump administration, are actually a part of an international network of terrorism. Because they cannot do this, line of attack at the domestic level, they are trying to tackle it from the international level. Okay? They have a lot more tools at their disposal to, quote unquote, tackle international networks of terror. You claim someone is a terrorist, you claim that they're being funded by foreign entities, and then boom, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Deny them their habeas corpus, torture them in Guantanamo Bay. This is the process that the American government has deployed. This report that Marco Rubio released, that he said, for more than 6 decades, the Cuban regime has been leading sponsor of radical leftism and third worldism in the United States. The State Department is exposing the full history of Cuban espionage and subversion in our country. The American people deserve to know. Joe Roth says, this report is a justification for the military invasion of Cuba and the new COINTELPRO. Rubio lists the People's Forum, Code Pink, and DSA as Cuban front groups, which the Trump administration will inevitably try to break and suppress. That is precisely what they're doing. Matt Petty has an opinion on this as well. He says, that's exactly it. The Rubio camp does not have a problem with communism as an economic system or an idea. They believe that the lesser races, civilizations of the world have gotten too uppity, and Tin Pot socialist states are the easiest to make an example of. When you point out that Islamo-leftism or third worldism is incoherent, that's the point. They're telling you to fear everyone else in the world, and it's all one horde trying to take what's yours, no matter what justification. This is why I was very frustrated. Dude, I can't fucking talk about the student protests in India right now, man. I'm sorry, okay? Maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm literally talking about my fucking federal government coming after me right now. Jesus Christ. Holy shit, spammers in the fucking chat. Piece by piece, we will get to it, okay? Fuck. You're saying chill. Just don't read the comment law. But like, this is not the first time this guy has been spamming it. There's been like a ton of people in the chat because it's a big fucking protest movement that's being suppressed by the Indian government. I know. We're going to get to it. Jesus Christ. Yeah, the report is so insane that it actually states, in all seriousness, that Cuba's main goal is to conquer the United States. It's about as dumb gets. Don't be fooled. This is the State Department trying to build a foundational case for U.S. military action should Trump decide to do it. These various threads can only be understood through the prism of the Cuban regime's ideological foundation, imbued by its founder with a singular goal of conquering the neighboring United States. Since 1959, Cuba has been, and without fundamental radical reforms, will always be, less a nation state than all-encompassing intelligence and subversion operation focused around its existential revolution against the United States. Amid all this, the Cuban people themselves continue to suffer in hunger and darkness, forced to live in something akin to modern slavery under the occupying regime, held hostage by their own state. The report also is extremely clueless on the big reason why Cuba is still offering its services to the extent it has any to Russia and China, because it views doing so as good balancing behavior against a neighboring adversary with infinitely more power than itself. A Cuban plot to undermine McDonald's, the ultimate example of American imperialism. Yeah. The threat posed by Cuba is described in far more dire terms than those employed by the U.S. intelligence officials and State Department diplomats over several decades, reviving speculation that the Trump administration is establishing a pretext for overthrowing the communist government in Havana, a longtime goal of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That is precisely what's going on. But the icing on the cake isn't just to create a fake sufficient reason to militarily invade Cuba, a country that we have been starving for 60 years and only have enacted more cruelty in the last decade. Okay? But besides that, this is an opportunity to basically create a legal structure to claim that domestic socialist movements, domestic left movements, are actually a part of this international apparatus of left terror. This is why I was very frustrated and very worried when I saw the counterterrorism seminar that they delivered this past weekend. I talked about it, I warned about it, and this is complementary to exactly what they're trying to establish. Okay? This is part of the reason why I brought up Fergie Chambers' arrest in Spain, directing the Spanish government to extradite Fergie Chambers, an American citizen with a profound amount of wealth, a centimillionaire, an inheritor of the Cox dynasty and the wealth, who funds certain protest movements and pro-Palestinian movements all around the globe, as a terrorist. Okay? They're trying to go after Fergie Chambers. They're trying to go after Roy Singham. Okay? Roy Singham lives in China. Fergie Chambers, I don't know where he lives, but I guess he was in Tunisia or something. And they are using the Spanish government. They use the Spanish government to intercept him at the point of travel and arrest him. And now they're demanding that Fergie Chambers get extradited to the United States of America so he can be prosecuted in the United States of America. Southern District of New York is actually playing a role in the RICO case against Roy Singham. Now, neither of these people are people in my sphere of influence or in my orbit in any way, shape, or form. I just know of them. Fergie has actually criticized a lot of the stuff that I do. I'm too reformist for him, whatever. I think it's still a clear-cut example of fascism to try to actively suppress, punish, and claim that all people that go against American foreign policy, American citizens that go against American foreign policy, are all actually terrorists. Okay? That's what they're doing. Centimillionaire says your reformist is funny. I mean, he is more radical than I am. Let's be real. So, 99-page State Department report on Cuba is drawing accusations of McCarthyism from peace groups and civil liberties advocates for naming private American citizens, including a member of Congress's daughter, over their opposition to U.S. policy. The report, titled Cuba, Capital of 21st Century Communism, casts the island as decades-long covert threats that has infiltrated the highest reaches of the U.S. government and cultivated generations of American activists. In a section on the revolutionary tourism, it named streamer Hassan Piker, Amazon Labor Union founder Christian Smalls, the Democratic Socialists of America, former UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, and Isra Hirsi a campus activist and the daughter of Representative Ilhan Omar, over their participation in a March 2026 aid convoy to Cuba. It goes on to note that Hersey was suspended from Barnard in 2024 for organizing Gaza solidarity encampments. Why is the State Department naming American citizens in their Cuba report where they seemingly complain about our opinions on U.S. sanctions policy? Piker wrote. This is absolutely protected by the First Amendment. They are trying to chill speech through intimidation. Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, whose group is also named, called the report McCarthyism, plain and simple. She told DropSite that Code Pink is now under Treasury Department investigation for bringing medical supplies to Cuban children's hospitals. The people delivering medicine are under investigation, not the officials enforcing policies that deprive Cubans of medicine, food, fuel, and electricity, she said. One of the things that I have been very frustrated by is that this is, they've been signaling that they're going to do this for the longest time. And a lot of fucking liberals have been celebrating this, thinking, oh, they're packing up our opposition in the Democratic Party. They're going to take care of all the fucking nasty little communists that we hate too. They don't realize that this is inevitably going to impact them as well. This is just the starting point. The real reason why they're doing this is because they want to eradicate the First Amendment. And if liberals actually play ball with this, if they appease the fascist monsters, they too will be in the same fucking concentration camps that we get sent to first. A good time to remind people that McCarthyism really just targeted subversives within the government, which resulted in numerous government workers being fired on suspicion of being gay. This was known as the Lavender Scare, and we're seeing this already with the vilification of trans people. Yes. It said the blockade that the report exists to justify has left Cuba with shortages of medicine, a healthcare system starved of supplies, and a collapsing power grid. Cuba poses no threat to the American people, the group said. The report makes no mention of the U.S. energy embargo imposed in January, which the group has noted caused nationwide blackouts and devastating collective punishment across the island. This month, 136 countries at the UN voted to condemn the suffocating economic sanctions on Cuba, with the U.S. and Israel among the handful opposed. Yeah. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. History doesn't often repeat, but it rhymes, is what they say, right? It's a cliche. Well, right now, history isn't even rhyming. It's just repeating. This is a justification for McCarthyism. And because they can't do that off domestic policies, because there's no domestic anti-terrorism statute in this country, they're doing it by creating a sufficient legal environment with the vague international terrorism statute that exists post-global war on terror. And they will trap regular dissidents, liberals as well. A new State Department report on Cuba's campaign of subversion against the United States, a virtual government blacklist against left-wing Americans and groups linked to last week's Rubio-led summit on political terrorism. The report is unusually candid about the government's targets. Many of the most significant upheavals in recent American political history, from the George Floyd riots to the rise of Antifa to the explosion of pro-terrorist activism on American college campuses, can be linked in some way, shape, or form to Cuban influence, the report says. So remember when Donald Trump was like, China is the reason why the election was stolen and China is the reason why everybody hates me? Marco Rubio's doing the same, but this time he's saying Cuba is the reason for why Black Lives Matter as a protest movement grew in this country. It is the highest level of delusion. Everyone with a fucking working brain cell understands that this is an abject lie, but it doesn't really matter. They're spitting on our face and telling us it's raining. As for those who these supposed agents of Cuban influence are, the report is remarkably explicit. It names people like Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's ice cream fame, mayors Zohran Mamdani and Karen Bass, media figures like Amy Goodman and Hassan Piker, organizations like the Democratic Socialists of America and the Amazon Labor Union. The implication is clear. Secretary of State Marco Rubio thinks there should be a modern-day blacklist of the political left in America. In fact, the report explicitly mentions the blacklist, McCarthy-era investigations and prosecutions of the 1950s and their effectiveness at dismembering the Communist Party USA. The 100-page report titled Cuba, the Capital of 21st Century Communism, was released this morning. An entire section of the report, numbering over 3 pages long, is dedicated to the Democratic Socialists of America. The Democratic Socialists of America serves as a particularly potent illustration of the ideological victory of Cuba's efforts to position itself as the spiritual capital of third worldist radicalism, the report says. This represents a significant advantage for the Cuban influence operation. Havana no longer needs to rely solely on intelligence penetration or asset cultivation to exert influence over the United States. Though the report concedes that DSA was not shaped by the direct and tangible influence of the Cuban government and that it has organic ideological commitments, it insists that none of that is to say the group has no ties to the Cuban regime and its influence network. Instead, the report points out the group's delegations to Cuba as evidence of Cuban influence. For more than 6 decades, the Cuban regime has been leading sponsors of radical leftism and third worldism in the United States. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in a post on Twitter linking to the report. Whatever you think of DSA, it is hardly fringe. It claims as members prominent politicians like New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, and it has helped to nominate dozens of politicians like him in the office in recent years. Senator Bernie Sanders identifies as a democratic socialist, having himself popularized the term, as do Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib, who are card-carrying members, as well as Mamdani. The Cuba report follows last week's Rubio-led International Summit to Political Terrorism. That summit, as I reported, introduced the new term far-left terrorism, abbreviated FLT, a term it never really defined, which, by the way, it's not supposed to. The vagueness is a part of the process, okay? That's why it's perfect. It's vague. You can slap it on anything you want to, from old folks that are sitting at, No Kings rallies to people who say Orange Man is a Cheeto in the dang White House, all the way to, more radical parts of the protest movement against Donald Trump. The vagueness is a feature, not a bug. Exactly. Speaking at the summit, Rubio vowed that further new terrorist designations for left-wing groups would be coming soon. Jeremy Lewin, the Undersecretary of State for Foreign Assistance, linked last week's political terrorism summit to today's Cuba report, saying on X, for 7 decades, the Cuban regime has been behind both the ideological underpinnings of third worldism and subversive organizing structures of the new radical left political terrorists that Secretary Rubio called out with clarity last week. But virtually all the summit could do is substantiate the supposed scourge of political terrorism was to focus on groups that are almost comically dated, like the 70s era Symbionese Liberation Army or the Weather Underground. The summit was vague about what are the equivalent groups today. Today's Cuba report, however, names names in an obvious attempt to stigmatize American citizens who are very much politically active today. In some cases, there are even sitting politicians, from Congresswoman Maxine Waters to Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. I read the 100-page report and counted references to at least 43 contemporary American groups and individuals, which the report identifies as follows. Suzanne Attlee, the president of the National Lawyers Guild, who participated in the Nuestra America convoy and who, the report notes, praised Venezuela's 2024 elections. The Amazon Labor Union, Antifa, Asada's Daughters, a Chicago-based Black Lives Matter abolitionist offshoot that trains young activists in the radical spirit of Assata Shakur. Association for Investment in Popular Action Committees, APAC, a California-based umbrella nonprofit that funds left-wing media and delegations to Cuba and Venezuela. Karen Bass, current mayor of Los Angeles and former congresswoman who was a Venceremos brigade organizer in the 1970s. This is real. I used to talk about Karen Bass's radical politics back in the day. Hasan, if you weren't CIA, I bet you'd be shaking in your boots right now. Yeah, no, this obviously, once again, to all of my naysayers on the more radical elements of the left, this once again proves that I am obviously a federal agent. This is how it works. Medea Benjamin, Black Alliance for Peace, Black Lives Matter, Chesa Boudin, the former district attorney of San Francisco, Changing Frequencies, Claudia Jones School, the Washington, D.C.-based organizing collective that conducts popular education and pro-Cuba lobbying, Code Pink, Women for Peace, Ben Cohen, Claudia de la Cruz, the co-founder of the People's Forum, IFCO executive director and 2024 presidential candidate for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Obviously, PSL is being determined as a front group for Roy Singham. That's like the big RICO case that they have developed right now. And even if you have your disagreements with the PSL, even if you have your disagreements with the People's Forum, understand that this is not going to stop there. And you're a fucking idiot if you think that this is just about radical communists, okay? The main politics sub is defending you again on topic. Look at that. State Department targets Hassan Piker and Ilhan Omar's daughter to DSA. What a massive waste of resources and time. For the American people, yes. For the American ruling class, however, this is and always been a top priority. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that like Redditors are actually beginning to recognize that the sincerity and the severity of the crisis at hand, you know? I mean, it's such a fucking ridiculous take to claim that Cuba, a country of 9 million that is 90 miles off of our coastline, that we have actively starved for the last 60 years and only gotten worse in our starvation policies in the last fucking 10, is capable of invading ideologically, militarily, doing anything to the United States of America. It's not only impossible to believe, but it's also, there's no evidence for it whatsoever. I'm going to say something that is going to anger my fellow Republicans about Mamdani. I listened to his interview with Lulu Navarro. For a low information voter who has no time to pay attention to the substance of his message, what he's saying is absolutely brilliant in his attacks against the right. The tone of what he's saying is brilliant. It's part folksy everyman. Republicans have abandoned the working class or a bunch of elites without being harsh or conspiratorial. He has gotten very strong, very fast, and is evolving his national messaging to the rest of the country. Despite my abject fear and repulsion of socialism, it is really impactful. If Democrats are really smart, they will nominate someone with his tenure and tone on economics and national policy, leaving out Israel and international politics, which is a whole other ball of wax. If Democrats do this in 28, we have a huge fucking problem. A huge fucking problem we will not be able to podcast bro our way out of. What is this? The dichotomy? Destiny, fuck Mamdani. Destiny says moving forward, he'll be banning people from his subreddit who make positive posts about Mamdani. I think all these DSA types are enemies. It's just too much. Yeah, I mean, this is the fucking federal agent, you know? I mean, he wishes he was a federal agent. He just doesn't have enough impact for the federal government to work with him, ironically enough. But yeah, he's such a fucking nasty little vindictive shithead.
I feel like changing AOC/Mamdani. AOC is whatever. Fuck Mamdani, and I'm banning all. If you write any positive shit about Mamdani on my subreddit, you better source the fuck out of it. Okay, no more of the like he fixed the New York budget or any of that bullshit. I think all these people are enemies. You can't. It's just too much. Like all the DSA cringe fucking shit is too much. I don't care. It cannot be until I see anybody. The only reason why I let AOC slide is because she is willing to push back against the super left people. I've never seen Mamdani do it. Don't know if he would do it. But if I see him do it, then I'll change my opinion on it. But at this point,
he's such a petty little tyrant in his like little circle on the internet. It's so funny. Like, who listens to this and goes, yeah, this guy's fucking kicking game right now. He's so based. How do you read this as anything but like a bitter man who has no power, no prominence, and is just like talking to an increasingly shrinking, irrelevant group of individuals that is basically a fucking cult? AOC is the only actual R-word progressive. Fuck her too.
I feel like
holy.
It's a little bit
absolute based. AOC, my queen.
Existential for our party.
For our party. It's like, bro, this is not your party. Okay? Like, this is the thing that I don't understand. He always talks about is like, he was like, DNC shouldn't be inviting Hasan. They should be inviting me instead. Oh, I wish they would give me the power one day so I could like really fix everything. And it's so funny because it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you're a deeply unserious egomaniac. You're a narcissistic sex pest. You've platformed every white supremacist in the last decade. Fix your fucking life. And if you want to actually have impact in American politics, stop trying to fucking harm the left movement in this country. It's such a strange thing for this guy to like present himself as this real beacon of prosperity, a real force to be reckoned with within the liberal Democratic Party when the Democrats don't want anything to do with him either. You can't be running around being like, our party needs to purge the left flank when it's not your party. Okay? We, our, these terms are not appropriate. I oppose the framing that I am, a part of the Democratic Party in the ways that people talk about it, where I say like I'm not a liberal, and yet sucks to suck for Bonarelli, Epstein, but our movement is more a foundational part of the Democratic Party than he is. Part of that is because he's just a hanger-on. He's just trying to claw his way into some kind of relevancy, but failing to do so because he gets in his own way every step of the way.
Not ever be able to criticize to the left is just fucking crazy. I have feelings changed on AOC/Mamdani. AOC is whatever. Fuck Mamdani.
You know?
And I'm
yeah. Razor sharp political instincts once again, demonstrating that he knows where the winds are blowing. If he had real ideological commitments, rather than operating off of pure resentment, okay, he would recognize where the movement was, where the momentum was, and he wouldn't position himself as being unbelievably antagonistic to that movement. Not to say that like DSA would ever welcome someone like Destiny into its own ranks, but he could at least dupe people into believing that he was a progressive force, right? But he's so fucking self-centered and so chock full of personal resentment. He is driven by his animosity to those he has declared ideological enemies due to the fact that at some point we've made him feel small, we've made him feel stupid, we've made him feel silly, only because he positioned himself against people like myself and the environment shifted from under his feet. Okay? Like with Israel. Israel is one of the best examples of this, right? Like he thought, as he said over and over again at the time, like, oh, Hasan is losing everything. We're going to destroy him. Everyone is going to know that he is a nefarious force, a bad force in American politics. And by 2025, I will have actually generated a lot more buzz than Hasan, something along those lines. It was such a stupid thing that he said. He's also very mad about Adam Mockler as well, I guess. Never mind, the lib media is never covering any of the Hasan shit. This is literally Adam's girlfriend. Kill me. The whole space is cooked as fuck. He's like going after Adam Mockler's girlfriend apparently because he doesn't like that Adam Mockler is not sufficiently defending him. Not realizing this is precisely the reason why people find you to be odious. He's targeting Sam Cedar, Adam Mockler, Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pacman. Yeah, his girlfriend called him pro-Israel, which he is. Yeah, he is. I don't know why he's like running away from it when at the apex of the genocide, he was running all over talking about how pro-Israel he is. That shit's not going to go away. He still is pro-Israel. He hasn't even positioned himself as having like a change of heart now. Anyway, so Ken Klippenstein finishes the article with guilt by association at its finest, but what exactly are they guilty of? What the report shows isn't that any of these people are knowingly taking directions from a foreign power, only that they disagree with the U.S. government on Cuba policy, or at most agree with Cuba. Their views can be wrong, aggressively, offensively wrong even, but it's their goddamn rights as Americans to hold them. Which, by the way, I don't know why Ken is posting that part over here. What do you mean aggressively and offensively wrong? He wants to maintain his fucking contacts within the government for saying stuff like that. Yes, George Floyd is on the list. I know. Yeah, Ayanna Pressley is mentioned here too, which is crazy. Democratic Congresswoman who the report notes publicly praised a convicted murderer Assata Shakur upon her death. And me as well. And Amy Goodman too. He's so obsessed with his own self-mythology that he forgets how weird and pathetic he comes off while simultaneously thinking he's being hard as hell. I feel like it's a perfect representation of how liberals obsess over identity, whereas leftists worry about outcomes and reality. Do you think them casting this broad and thin net will absolutely agitate the Democratic Party? Right now is probably the worst time. Or I guess from their perspective, from the perspective of the government, it's the best time to do this because there is already internal commotion within the ranks of the Democratic Party, and they are not going to stand in opposition. If they see this, I suspect some, and it would be phenomenal if the Democrats actually shocked me and did what they're supposed to normally do in opposition to Trumpism, right? But I suspect a lot of power brokers in the Democratic Party are going to look to this as a gift, especially considering that while all this stuff is happening, they have been agitating in the exact same direction as the right. There's not a lot of daylight between what you hear from Fox News about democratic socialism, about people like myself, and the likes of Neera Tanden, who are spokespersons for the establishment wing of the party. They see the growth of democratic socialism within the ranks of the Democratic Party as a real threat, as an existential threat. So they probably look to this as the federal government doing them a favor. Will they stand in opposition to Trumpism, or will they appease the fascist mob? Will they appease the growth of fascism in this country? We shall see. This is the bipartisanship they always talk about? Yes. What is this? Okay, Osama keeps getting held by AutoMod. You're using block term, maybe? Is that why? Oh, Orlando J. Perez, professor of political science at UNT Dallas, who writes extensively on Cuba, says, State Department's new Cuba report performs a kind of ventriloquism, seating Havana behind 60 years of American protests and treating every voice raised against racism of empire as Cuba throwing its own. It reads Assata Shakur's words on Black Lives Matter site. It is our duty to fight for freedom as evidence of Cuba's authorship, as though Black Americans needed an offshore script to name their own oppression. Reducing civil rights struggle to foreign manipulation denies the country's radical history and strips domestic organizers of their agency, an argument that is at once historical, ahistorical, reductive, and politically dangerous. It reaches the conclusion by borrowing the left's own romance with Havana, quoting Jacobin approvingly, and dressing the result in CIA memos and a 1987 Rand note. When an official document recasts civil rights history and campus dissent as foreign subversion, it hands the state a license to treat disagreement as disloyalty. The same reflex Washington indulged in the 1950s and left ordinary Americans to pay for it. You made the list? I know, chatters. I know I made the list. I was talking about it. This is why I'm covering it. Has any mainstream media picked up the story yet, or might, like MS Now, pick it up this evening? Here's the problem. A lot of these dissidents that have been identified, this might come as a surprise to absolutely no one in this community, are also major critics of Israel. While the issue is tied to Cuba, okay, a country that we as Americans can freely travel to with obvious government restrictions that we abide by, they can't connect this movement to Palestine or Palestinians in any meaningful capacity. So they're using Cuba as the foreign entity that these domestic activists and organizers are getting their notes from. This also works twofold. It works twofold because they also have an interest in militarily destroying Cuba, in potentially militarily occupying Cuba, right? Waging war against Cuba. Not just the economic war that we have been waging for decades, but direct war with the might of the U.S. military. The only thing holding back the American government as it stands is that we have our hands wrapped up in the quagmire in the Strait of Hormuz. That's the only thing holding back the American government currently. If that went away, we absolutely would overnight look for an easy W by militarily invading Cuba. It is Iran that is holding America back currently. You all need to respond to this like the Yippies, make it a ridiculous spectacle to punish them for going after you. One of the best stunts the Yippies did was walk into the House of Un-American Activity Committee hearing wearing decked out tricorn hat Revolutionary War costumes and make a case for the First Amendment. Okay, dude, that is the corniest. Oh my God. Yeah, I'd rather go to prison, man. If I'm going to Guantanamo Bay, or if I'm already getting my fucking ass beat by the federal government for no reason, I'm not going to look corny right before that happens. Okay? That's crazy.